Hello, my name is Arthur Jura. I'm the bonsai curator here at the North Carolina Arboretum. Wherever you are right now, I appreciate you joining us for the program today. We have an interesting one on tap. This is a planting that's pretty well known in the Arboretum's collection. We've had it for a good while now, more than 10 years. And part of what makes it so popular is every year in May it blooms. This is an azalea, and it puts on a big flower show for a week, 10 days, and it attracts an awful lot of attention. Well, otherwise, it's a very interesting scene. You're not seeing it at its best right now. I've done some preparatory work in anticipation of what's going to happen today. And so this plant, just 2 days ago, was very full. And these were more full, and the overall look of the composition was one of being badly overgrown. So now when you see it, it's pretty well stripped out. You know, this is completely cleaned up. We blew out all the debris that was in there and pulled the moss off, all in preparation for the work today. Well, what is the work today? I'll tell you. We're going to take this piece and put it into a little bit larger container. Because all the things in it have grown over time, it's starting to get cramped. Some of that we can alleviate through pruning, but some of it is just a physical reality of the plants having gotten considerably larger and needing more space. So we're going to give them more space. Set this aside a moment and let you see the container that it's going to go in. This is a very nice shallow tray made by Sarah Rayner up in Red Wing, Minnesota. She's certainly one of the finest American bonsai potters. And so we're very glad to have this beautiful container. And to give you an idea of the comparative size, let's just set this one in here a moment. And there you can see we're not getting a great deal larger, but it is a bigger footprint, and it'll allow me to spread things out a bit. So part of what will happen today is the river or stream is going to get wider. Okay, so let's clear the decks and get ready to take this apart. Rocks will come out, gravel will come out. We'll cut the landscape into sections and then put it all back together in the new pot. That's the work today. So let's see how it goes. We've gotten it to the point where the landscape is out of the pot, and I've separated the two halves because the roots were running together, joining underneath the suggested stream. So here are the two halves of the piece. I wanted to point out that the azalea grows both on top of a rock, but also some of its roots go down into soil below. So it's both a root on rock and a root over rock at the same time. And what that means is I'm not going to disturb this too much. I'll take a little bit away from it, just like create little divots or take slices out of it, and then backfill them just to cut some of the really old roots that are in this old muck on top of the rock. Also wanted to let you know that I think we're going to pull this one out entirely, this boxwood right here. It's gotten very large. It's a nice plant and all, but for where it sits, it's kind of obscuring the view of the main feature of the planting, which is this azalea perched on top of a rock. So what I'm going to do is take this piece and swap it over to here. It's smaller, and we do need something here, but we'll use the smaller one instead and just put this one aside. Meantime, this azalea here, which has over time shifted its shape entirely in the direction away from this plant, because this plant's getting all the sun, and this one has to move out from under the shade to get its fair share of light. We're going to take that and give it more room, push it more into the front zone, and I think we'll turn it around too, so that it will be inclined toward the stream, just like this one is inclined over the stream. Okay, so that azalea will sit something like that when all's said and done. All right, the separating has been done. I've gone ahead and put it back together, roughly speaking, but as I said, this one here is probably going to move out of the composition. We'll pot it up in its own pot, and maybe it'll be its own little bonsai eventually. This one, we're going to try to put in its place somewhere over here. So it'll be more like that. And then this azalea here, this is the secondary azalea, it's going to turn around and do that. Otherwise, these parts are going to go more or less back into place, although spread out just a little bit. So now I'm going to see about opening up things in here a little bit. I'm seeing lots and lots of roots, right? All those roots, but those roots come from the boxwoods, right? The azalea roots have a different look to them. They're much more fine, and they're mostly in this old muck that's plastered on the rock. And we'll replace that with some new muck after I cut some divots into it in order to allow space to fill in with fresh material. So we'll be doing a little bit of root pruning when we make those removals, and then we'll be backfilling with some fresh medium for it to grow in. So same basic principle as on the rest of the composition. We're reducing the root mass, opening things up. When it gets so dense like that, it's hard for water to penetrate into the heart of the root zone. And that's not good for the plant's health. If you have a dry core in a root ball like that, it'll cause some of the roots to die back. So we're going to be loosening up everything and creating space for new roots to grow. And then we'll put it all back together. All right, we've reached the point where the deconstruction work is done. All right, everything's been torn apart. You can see all our plants are not only separated, but they've been root pruned to the extent that I feel is necessary and I can do. And this one in particular, you know, we have to take some away because that reinvigorates the plant. When you do this sort of thing correctly, repotting I'm talking about, but really any kind of horticultural practice, pruning for example, when you do it correctly, it stimulates new growth in the plant. It doesn't hurt the plant, it doesn't set it back in any significant way. What it does is it reinvigorates the plant to push new growth, and then we manage the new growth so as to regulate how much the plant produces. So these are ready, and I would take a moment just to tell you about pruning these a little bit more. I took the time while I had them out to go ahead and prune them, having the advantage of being able to hold them like this and see them in a different way makes it easier to access these very dense crowns. Here's the one that is being taken out, and you can see it's just like a shell here. It's so thick, and getting in there and trying to thin them out is difficult, to say the least. Just a word about Kingsville boxwood, which is what this is. They are beautiful plants. They are dwarfs that grow very, very slowly. So a tree like this, you know, this is 30 or more years old, right? It's been pruned all the while it's growing, but still. They lend themselves to bonsai in that you can hardly hurt them through pruning. You could take everything it has off, all the foliage it has off, and it'll produce new foliage. So that's a very good trait. However, they grow everywhere, right? They send growth out in all directions. And so the pruning never ends. I don't much enjoy growing Kingsville boxwood as standalone bonsai. I like them in this application as kind of shrubbery, because then you can let them fill out like they do, and you only have to go in there and clean them out on occasion, because they're just supposed to suggest a green shrub, and they do that very well. But as far as growing them individually as specimens, despite all their winning characteristics, the fact that as soon as you finish pruning, about a half an hour later they start growing, and a week later they've filled out. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not that much. Okay, we're ready to start putting things back into our new container. So that's what we're going to do. We've reached the point now where everything has been put back in place. Of course, some of the places are new places. A new place for this being pushed into the front a little bit and reoriented, given more space. This is a little azalea here. And then this one, which used to be over here, has shifted over to here to take the place of the bigger mass that was removed. I considered earlier today taking a photograph of the way that the stream was laid out so that I could get everything back in the exact place. But it wouldn't have worked out so well anyway because the container is a different size. So things are going to be shifted a little bit. And in the end, I decided the way to go is not to worry so much about how it used to look, but to, in this moment, while remaking it, make it look as good as I can, right? I'm employing the same basic parts. Some rearranging has been done, and in terms of the rocks, they are generally in the same place that they were, although they might be shifted this way or that. I'm not trying to recreate what was. Always we seek to improve. Even when you have an old established piece like this, it's still desirable when you have the opportunity to make adjustments that you think result in positive outcomes. That's how I approached it. So let's take a look around. This piece is meant to be seen mostly from one direction. And you're looking at the back side of it now. But I want it to look good from any direction, you know. But the way that it will be presented to the public is like this. And so where things are placed is done with the presumption that people are going to look at it like this. Everything needs to look right from this perspective. Of course, we don't want it to look ridiculous from other perspectives, but this is the viewing front. All right, all that remains now is a really important part, which is the detail work. We have moss that we want to patch in so that we're not looking at a bunch of fresh medium. And also we want to lay in fresh gravel to suggest the water, the river or stream as you look at it. And so that's what I'll proceed to. And when that's done, then the work is done for today. So let's finish it up. We use pins to hold the moss in place. And so you see it's a U shape made out of wire, and we press it into the moss and firm it down so that you're actually tacking the moss onto the muck, which is slabbed onto the side of the root ball. So the part that comes at the very end is actually something that really makes the whole planting come alive. And that's where we take this light-colored gravel and use it to suggest the stream bed, the river bed. And we don't lay it on thick. We have a bed of potting media down here so that roots can get in there too. This is just the top dressing, and it's sold for well filtration. And we use it sometimes in media, but we use it to suggest water. So we sprinkle the gravel in, taking care, right, to not get carried away with it. We want it to look neat. And you see how that stands out. It really pops a lot of light into the interior of this planting. Of course, it looks cleaner now than it ever will again, but that's okay. When it gets a little too contaminated or nasty with algae or what have you, we just take the old out and put in some new. I use this scoop, and it lets me get in there real close and be fairly exact with where the gravel ends up. And now here we are at the end, and things have gone together well. I'm pleased with the look of it. It took about 3 hours to do all the work that you just watched. And there was preparatory work yesterday. It took 4 or 5 hours to trim out this one azalea. And it got a hard pruning back, took a lot off of it. And so, even though I'm pleased with how it looks, I have to say that it doesn't look good enough to put out on display. You won't see this planting out on display in the garden this year. But I hope in 23 it'll be back out there and flowering in May like it usually does and creating a big sensation because people really are fond of this particular planting. If you'd like to know more about it, on the Curator's Journal website, which is curatorsjournal.net, in the free content section, there's a write-up about this particular planting. It gives you the history, it shows you some images from years past, and it fills in a lot of blanks that we didn't have time to go into today. I hope that you might seek that out and read about it because it'll enhance your appreciation of the piece. And you just watched the latest chapter in its story. It's been going on for 3 or 4 decades now. A good day. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking with you another time. Come on out to the Arboretum. Beautiful place to visit any time of year. But when the bonsai are on display, see some amazing things. Thank you.
How did the art of bonsai come to be so central to the identity of an arboretum in southern Appalachia? At the North Carolina Arboretum, we consciously root a foreign art in our own place, updating its ancient image to the present day. Subscribe to the Curator's Journal, a year-long online course offering the ultimate insider's view of bonsai at the North Carolina Arboretum by curator Arthur Jura.